Welcome to uBook channel. Read and listen to the greatest stories that mankind has ever told. From Iliad to Covid Terror, and other famous classics. Enjoy the best world literatures throughout history.
Covid Terror. Copyright 2021 by Gerry de Cadiz. All rights reserved. A unified Al-Qaeda and Islamic State took advantage of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in reinvigorating its jihadist cause for dominance and the re-establishment of a caliphate. COVID-19 whistleblower, Dr. Li Wenliang, said, "It has been confirmed that they are coronavirus infections, but the exact virus strain is being subtyped."
Covid Terror. Chapter 6.
Institut Pasteur, Paris, France. December 3, 2019. Holding the result of a laboratory diagnosis of a sample taken from a patient in Zhongnan Hospital of Wuhan University, Gwen's mixed Filipino and French expressions indicate her surprise that the dreaded coronavirus struck. Although she half expected that it will really come to this point. When the virus X sample was stolen from the National Biosafety Laboratory of Wuhan Institute of Virology about a month ago, she informed right away her research team of a possible misuse of the virus. France's Institut Pasteur and Japan's National Institute of Infectious Diseases were also notified to implement stricter measures for the security of the remaining specimens she gave them when her discovery was submitted for validations. Efforts of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the People's Armed Police to recover the viral agent were unsuccessful. Based on records in WHO, the Pakistani professor had no known relative in China. A certain General Gu Kehao, who recommended her for a teaching position in the university, told investigators that what he did is a little favor for a mutual friend in the embassy of Pakistan, whose country shared a very strong relations with Beijing. He insisted that for more than 2 years, he does not have a direct contact, nor had any previous dealings with Dr. Siddiqui. In the succeeding days after the incident, their research team in WIV was reorganized. For 3 weeks, Gwen helped director Zhou Meng conceptualize the research problems, do some data mining for the review of technical literatures and articles, and conduct field sampling and laboratory experiments. By the last week of November, she received a notice that Institut Pasteur wanted her to spearhead a new research project of a fast-emerging disease. After several calls from Dr. Hubert Manville, and encouragement of other colleagues, she decided to request Dr. Zhou if her contract with Wuhan Institute of Virology can be terminated. The WIV director advised her, "I will not allow you to cease your work with the institute. Rather, we will just modify your contract in such a way that you're still officially connected with us even if you're in France. That is most agreeable to me. I intend to finish our research here, and still collaborate with you in other projects. That's what I have in mind. In any case, you can visit WIV anytime you want." Dr. Zhou shook her hands warmly in appreciation. Upon arrival in Paris, she was visited by an Interpol agent, inquiring what really happened in China. The WHO and several UN states are so concerned with the loss of virus X. She also learned of the true personal background of Dr. Amira Siddiqui. The Al-Qaeda operative waited for an opportune time to be able to access a potential viral agent. There was an unverified report from the Chinese police that a certain powerful PLA general have been helping her since 2003. It was the same officer who pressured WHO officials to recruit Sixi as part of its teaching force. In 2006, it was reported by Xinhua Press that a group of dismissed soldiers planned to steal a sample of the SARS-CoV from the Guangzhou Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the research center which eventually, along with Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention of Hong Kong University. City established a genetic link between the SARS coronavirus appearing in civets and humans, confirming claims that the virus had jumped across species. The operation was aborted when a team from the PLA Special Operations Forces, acting on a tip from a paramilitary informer, stormed their hideout and eliminated the threat. It was early afternoon that Sixi, Sharifia, and Jian disembarked at the Hankou railway station, an interchange station of Line 2 of the Wuhan Metro. The group decided to take the rapid transit system from Henan to Wuhan in Hubei province. Dressed in nondescript and typical attire of commoners, with 3D printed skin-tone disguise masks, no one can tell that the three commuters casually conversing in fluent Wuhanhua in front of the art wall, are posted in the most wanted list of the Chinese People's Armed Police Force. 5 minutes later, a cobalt blue Cadillac XT6 picked up the group, and speed away on the direction of Jianggan district, to the northwest, left, bank of the Yangtze River. The 800-meter ride via the Hankouzan Crossroad and Jindun Alley was uneventful, except that it doubled the travel time due to traffic. The cold weather is somewhat intolerable, but a Sunday always free the over 11 million people from their homes and work, to enjoy the different amenities of a millennial highly urbanized city, that is considered to be the political, economic, financial, commercial, cultural, and educational center of central China. They parked in front of the Lilan Business Hotel. Their driver, a certain Mr. Fan, simply said by way of an introduction at the station, to fasten their seat belts because that's always the order of General Gu. After they got off from the car, he led them to a side passageway and entered the Huanan Seafood Wholesale Market. The market has over 1,000 tenants occupying over an area of 5 hectares. Based on media reports, the place is said to be the largest seafood wholesale market in central China, with wild animals sold in its western zone. As they got nearer, Sixi saw the suitability of the market for their experiment. It was located in the newer part of the city, near shops and apartment blocks, and very near to the continuously crowded Hankou railway station. According to residents, the main items sold in the market were crabs, shrimps and striped bass. But with the presence of local demand for the consumption of exotic animals, it also offered yaoi and other wild animals for sale, a feature uncommon in most Chinese wet markets. The international media reported that the market lately passed the city officials' inspections, despite its seemingly unsanitary conditions. It had narrow lanes and stalls in close proximity, where livestock were kept alongside dead animals. Sanitation was dismal, with poor ventilation, and garbage piled on wet floors. They saw animals openly being slaughtered, and carcasses skinned in the market. I will give you a bonus of $1,500, that is equivalent to a 2-month salary, for picking the best place for my study. Sixi handed Fan an envelope. The driver smiled broadly and bowed several times. He approached a vendor who peddled some strange spices and talked animatedly. As usually common, this type of dealer also does the negotiation with poachers of wild animals being sold in the wet market. After some negotiation, he motioned them to follow him to a shack, at the northern side of the market. In a corralled area with tarpaulin canopy, are several steel cages containing snakes, turtles, porcupines, otters, civets, marmots, hedgehogs, salamanders, beavers, badgers, and other wildlife animals. There are 240 by 100 cubic centimeter metal vaults, each contains a fully grown pangolin. The Chinese pangolin has the appearance of a scaly anteater having a head and body measuring about 40 to 58 centimeters and a tail up to 38 centimeters long. An adult has 18 rows of overlapping scales accompanied by hair, a rare combination in mammals with a small, narrow mouth and a little, pointed head. Sixi readied for this transaction. The black market spot price per kilo is $350. A mature pangolin can weigh up to 15.4 pounds, so this one will cost roughly $2,450. She handed to the vendor an envelope with the payment. She asked him, "What do you feed to this animal?" A very pleased poacher replied, "It usually ate ants and termites in the wild. When it's delivered to us, we feed them with anything it would accept." Before coming here, she initially searched the net for possible food of a pangolin in captivity. A website advertised of selling pangolin foodstuff, through a specially prepared diet consisting of farmed insects, and other nutritious ingredients and offered in a moist crumble. Mr. Fan, motioning to Sixie, talked to the vendor. "My boss says, if we can possibly leave the animal here by next week, we will come for it." The man agreed. Jian gave him a bag containing the advertised nourishments. She pronounced the final say to the vendor, "I don't want the animal be starved. That is its food." Another envelope passed to his hand. "It's a little bonus for taking care of my pet. Just make sure that it will be fed every day. Mr. Fan will come here anytime he wants, and you can release the animal to him, even in my absence." Before taking the metro back to Henan, she instructed the driver, "If I did not call you by Monday, go back to the market, and you can take the pangolin for food. I only want its scales for souvenir. I'll get it when I come back next week." On a densely packed cabin of the train, Sixie discarded messily on the food counter, the styrofoam packaging of the pangolin feeds. She also scattered its scraps on waiting areas, tables, and displayed food delicacies back at the Hankow railway station. Even the sanitary gloves and face mask she used, were haphazardly left on the wash basin. Before leaving her lab, she injected a considerable amount of virus X tissue cultures to the feeds. "Call it bioterrorism, but this is pure scientific study," she silently told herself. Sixie called for a late-night dinner celebration back in Pohang. They took the best menu of Waxian restaurant, at Renmin Road in Hualong district. She also ordered the domain's Pierre Chavin Grande Reserve Rouge, a halal-certified red wine usually consumed exclusively during parties and monumental festivities. They hungrily consumed a main course, presenting a sphere of corn mousse filled with crab and smoked herring caviar, dusted with smoked bacon powder. After a hearty dinner, she raised a toast to her companions, intoning, "Let's drink to the success of our field experiment today." The media will surely be making the announcements of the effect of a virus X inoculated pangolin in the coming days. Allah Akbar. The Institut Pasteur assigned Gwen to a project study entitled Disease X, a placeholder name that was adopted by the World Health Organization in February 2018, on its short list of blueprint priority diseases, to represent a hypothetical, unknown pathogen that could cause a future epidemic. The project intends to ensure that the planning of human health centers like the Institut Pasteur is sufficiently flexible to adapt to an unknown pathogen like broader vaccines, sufficient medical responders, and fully operational manufacturing facilities. Another is to encourage WHO and IP projects to focus their research efforts on entire classes of viruses such as coronavirus, instead of just individual strains like Zika virus, thus improving the capability to respond to unforeseen strains. The IP director instructed her to focus the Disease X project on establishing plan and management protocols that will readily respond to a serious international epidemic that may be caused by a pathogen currently unknown to cause human disease, which could be a new pathogen or the re-emergence of an old disease. Detailing her under the Genomes and Genetics Department, it is expected that she will take interest in gene regulation and evolutionary dynamics, including replication fidelity, quality control of gene expression, genetic diversity of populations and its impact on adaptation, organization, and evolution of genomes that would become the solid basis for research programs in synthetic biology, antibiotic resistance, neurodegenerative disorders, and emergent pathogens. Dr. Del Pilar, do you want any assistance there? The laboratory aide Anisa Dara called from the office. I'm good. Thank you for immediately furnishing me a copy of this report. One of the perks of being connected with the renowned research center is prioritization of medical cargoes from regional offices anywhere in the world. The parcel containing the viral transport medium arrived at the Institut Pasteur this morning by special courier, and she lost no time to examine it. For fear that the VTM won't pass through, an advanced copy of the short explanatory report of the diagnosis of the suspected patient 0 of virus X was emailed to her by Dr. Zhou of WIV.
Dr. Ai Wei from Zhongnan Hospital of Wuhan University requested the National Biosafety Laboratory to verify a real-time reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, or RRT-PCR test, for a patient believed to be the first confirmed case, from an unknown disease of a virus that resembles to the SARS-CoV of 2003. The man, a 55-year-old spice vendor at the Huanan seafood market who actually engaged in selling wildlife animals, complained of feeling ill on November 20, after eating a pangolin meat that he prepared 3 days prior. The animal, a priced Chinese delicacy, was given to him by a certain Mr. Fan from Henan province. He also shared the meat with friends in the market, while some of it were brought home to his family. He thought that he is just suffering from an ordinary flu, due to the cold weather. But his condition got worse the next day. He felt so tired and contacted with a malignant sore throat, fever, chill, and myalgia. He consulted a local clinic, but the doctor could not figure out what was wrong with him. He returned to his stall, and despite experiencing difficulty in breathing and a fever, continued doing business. He noticed that a lot of his neighboring vendors in the market and their families had been contacted by the still unknown illness, and showing the same symptoms. At home, his children have fevers and cough, while his wife experienced fever and shortness of breathing.
Chinese government data leaked by the South China Morning Post has suggested that an unknown disease began infecting people in Wuhan city, significantly earlier than initially believed, with the first patient identified on November 17, and the rapid spread of the disease started from this date. Gwen called Director Zhou in China. I saw the seriousness of the situation. I never thought that virus X will become a health concern. Our team here in WIV isolated the virus X, using Vero cells from the laboratory confirmed patient 0 in China. I need you to help us, he nearly pleaded. Understanding the condition of first case may help identify the intermediate animal host and understand how the virus emerged. It could also help time date a disease outbreak, which would be useful for projecting its trajectory. The WIV director explained, studying the first human case could give us an idea on the evolution of this virus in humans. Director, what makes you think that it's the virus X which caused the disease? He replied formally to emphasize his point. Dr. Del Pilar, we ran a genome sequencing of this new virus, and the result told us that its strain is similar to your virus X. His voice on edge. The fear of the scientific community here in China is that Dr. Siddiqui succeeded in isolating then propagating the stolen virion in a tissue culture. From there, it's so simple to inoculate it on some medium, say animal food, for the virus to jump across species. What kind of tests that you want me to do with the sample here? She just wanted to be assured that her efforts won't be wasted. As a member of the WIV team, I sent you another oropharyngeal swab by direct military transport, through the French consulate in Wuhan to Beijing Capital International Airport, and then to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. That is to comply with the requirement of processing the sample within 24 hours. Director Zhou sounds very worried. Some Politburo officials in Beijing blamed him for the loss of virus X at the National Biosafety Laboratory, due to a breach in security protocol. She wanted him to be encouraged. I got the sample in 10 hours. It's already being prepared for the laboratory procedure. That's the best you can do. Try to simulate isolating the virus from the swab sample, and by doing a phylogenetic analysis of the whole genome sequences, see if it clustered around with the virus X strain that you have in Institut Pasteur. It's not a statement, but a direct order from a research team leader. He added an official pronouncement. For purposes of standards and scientific nomenclature, from now on, we will call virus X as SARS-CoV-2 and its disease will become 2019 nCoV. The former indicates the viral strain's resemblance to the previous SARS coronavirus, while the latter will enable researchers to make a distinction, that it is a novel virus which was detected in year 2019. Gwen put her attention on reading the explanatory note of WIV scientists, regarding the sample that they sent to her, which is intended for verification. In the early days of a disease outbreak situation, it is very important to isolate the causative virus in developing and evaluating diagnostic tools, therapeutics, and vaccine candidates. The SARS-CoV-2 in China was first isolated using patient zeros, airway epithelial cells, and it was classified into the subgenus Sarbecovirus of beta-CoVs by phylogenetic analyses of the gene sequences. Applicable data from WIV were referenced, particularly on SARS-CoV and the MERS-CoV, that were initially isolated and grew readily in Vero cells. This is a report on the isolation of SARS-CoV-2, using Vero cells from a patient in Huanan Seafood Market in Wuhan, China. The patient is a 55-year-old male wildlife vendor who developed fever, chill, and myalgia on 3 days after November 17. When the National Biosafety Laboratory confirmed a diagnosis of SARS-CoV-2 infection, he developed nasal congestion, cough, and sputum. Oxygen supplementation was started on day 4 of illness, and his oxygen requirement was increased to 6 liters per minute on day 7 of illness. Fever persisted for 10 days, and his maximum body temperature during his illness was 38.9 degrees Celsius. The patient's oropharyngeal samples were obtained by using UTM kit containing 1 milliliter of viral transport media on day 7 of his illness. The sample of patient 0 from WIV was brought through a sealed PVC box containing a specialized VTM, addressed directly to Dr. Guinevere Dalpilar at Institut Pasteur. She lost no time in preparing to isolate the causative virus. The IP laboratories are fully equipped for any type of testing germs, which comprises of microscopic bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoa that can cause diseases. It usually took a week to fully extract the ribonucleic acid, RNA, from the sample. Gwen took the appropriate instruments, one of which is a T25 flask, and made a proper labeling. After which, the monolayers of Vero cells were inoculated with the sample and cultured the cells at 37 degrees Celsius in a 5% carbon dioxide atmosphere. She secured the sample and put a signage, SARS-CoV-2 evaluation. As she entered her office, a colleague motioned her to sit down and pointed at the TV set. A news anchor is highlighting a YouTube feed of a citizen journalist, who had been doing critical reporting from Wuhan. There is a rumor of a health emergency. I will use my camera to document what is really happening in Wuhan. I will help spread the voice of the Chinese people to the outside world, Qian Qiashi was saying. Indeed, you do that, Gwen thought. Her colleagues in Institut Pasteur of Shanghai remarked about the agonizing process of clearing medical samples to pass through immigration. In their messenger, somebody posted how the package from Hubei has to be labeled as a sample for gynecological cancers experimentation. At least when the inspector heard the word Ichhan, he waved it away. Binyam Meskel, an Eritrean laboratory technician, joined the chat. The Chinese tries to hush-hush any issue that may lead to a perception that the government is inept of handling a crisis. But that is expected of them. Unless the central government would say so, everything will remain under TARP. Information is dangerous. I learned that from my own country. Getting a mug of Finca El Injerto and settling on her favorite couch, Gan tries to contain the excitement of studying firsthand the impact of virus X, which is now being tagged in China as SARS-CoV-2, with the idea that it resembles to the previous SARS outbreak. From various news feeds in her Facebook timeline, her classmates from medical school were sharing a lot of tidbits of the suspected novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV. Why not try Luwak? The taste is very unique. Their office secretary, a fellow Asian and a nurse by profession, would always try to comment on whatever she would take for a snack. Thanks, Anissa. But I'd rather not, even if you give me €1,000 for it. I can't take a cat poop for coffee. Putting on a headset to signify not to be disturbed. She tuned into a YouTube channel of a long-playing and relaxing piano instrumentals. Gwen started reading in detail published researches, as well as medical transcripts and laboratory tests of previous cases of SARS-CoV in 2003. This could be a big help in evaluating the new virus against previous germs known to humanity. Dr. Guinevere Del Pilar conducted an assay of the sample from Wuhan in the following days. It was an investigative procedure for qualitatively assessing or quantitatively measuring the presence, amount, or functional activity of a coronavirus, or other clinical markers for disease of the analyte, on the swab of patient 0. 5 days after inoculation of Vero cells with the patient's oropharyngeal swab, a blind passage was done on the culture supernatant, into a T25 culture flask with monolayers of Vero cells. She noted that any cytopathic effects could not be discerned. But after another 3 days from the first blind passage, a cytopathic effect consisting of rounding and detachment of cells, was observed in the whole area of the T25 flask. In order to observe virus particles, a Vero cell monolayer showing the cytopathic effects was fixed. It was cut on ultramicrotome at 65 nanometers. Ultra-thin sections were stained with saturated 4% uranyl acetate, and 1% lead citrate, before examination with a transmission electron microscope at 80 kV. Seen under a Joule GEM 1400 plus TEM, spherical particles with crown-like spikes, ranging from 66 to 81 nanometers in diameter, were observed within the cytoplasmic vesicles, and in the extracellular space adjacent to cell membrane. For whole genome sequencing of the virus isolate, beta-cov China WIV1 2020, culture supernatant of Vero cells infected was used for RNA extraction. RNA was extracted by using QIOMP viral RNA minikit, according to the manufacturer's instructions. RNA libraries were prepared using TrueSeq stranded total RNA kit according to the manufacturer protocol. Sequencing was performed on an Illumina NextSeq 500 platform, produced on average a total of 150 million reads, 150 BP per sample, as per the manufacturer's instructions in Macrogen Incorporated. FastQ was used to trim the adapter and remove low-quality bases and reads. Qualified reads were mapped to NC045512, a SARS-CoV-2 genome reference using Burroughs-Wheeler aligner, and a BAM file was produced. In this BAM file, the variation was confirmed by comparing with genome using SAM tools. For genome-based phylogeny analysis, 37 strains, including beta-cov China WIV2 2020 were used in combination with beta-cov China WIV1 2020. The sequences used for analysis were downloaded from NCBI and GISAID. The 37 strain genomes were multiple sequence aligned using MAFFT, a sequence alignment tool, and were used to generate phylogenetic tree. Phylogenetic analysis of the aligned sequence was performed with 1000 bootstrap replicates using MegaX, and a general time reversible model used as the nucleotide substitution model. A next-generation sequencing of beta-cov China WIV1 2020, with accession number IP049891, revealed 9 mutations compared to the NBL 055513 reference genome isolated from the National Biosafety Laboratory. Most of the mutations in the isolate consisted of 70% alternative genes, and 30% reference genes, NBL 055513. 5 variants were found in ORF1AB, 1 variant in S gene, 2 variants in ORF3A, and 1 variant in each gene. Of the 9 mutations, 6 also showed changes in amino acids. When comparing this isolate with the one isolated from Wuhan Institute of Virology, Beta-Cove China WIV1 2020, 12 variants, including the above 9 mutations, were found. These mutations may occur by cell culture adaptation, in that the culture isolate was obtained after the first blind passage, or by microevolution of SARS-CoV-2 before acquisition in Wuhan. Because those genome sequences are quite homologous to each other, it was difficult to validate these two hypotheses. The phylogenetic tree was analyzed using 37 genome information, including the coronavirus isolated from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. As a result, it was confirmed that this present isolate is a beta-cove, belonging to the coronavirus subgenus Sarbecovirus, and that it closely clustered with virus X, previously isolated at France's Institut Pasteur and Japan's National Institute of Infectious Diseases, through a dried blood SpOTS specimen taken from Dante Ditura, a Black Death victim from Siena, Italy. How did it goes, Doc Gwen? Dr. Hubert Manville inquired about her confirmatory testing of patient 0. They're having dinner at Le Jules Verne, a posh restaurant located on the 2nd floor of the Eiffel Tower. They've been enjoying the dreamlike and majestic view of Paris, with a menu of scallops with lime zest and caviar, chestnut puff pastry and vanilla cream, citrus zest, and opaline. Just as expected, Doc Hubert. The view above in the City of Love is mesmerizing, although this is just a business dinner with a colleague. I am finalizing a paper confirming that the virus X we brought from Italy could be the etiology or causative agent of the fast-spreading disease in China. My experiment on isolating the RNA from the swab of patient 0 provided a very strong scientific evidence that the SARS-CoV-2 from Wuhan had its origin from the virus X strain. Hubert sounded an alarm. So, our worry now had turned to a higher level. Just think of what will happen next time, if the new virus fell in the hands of terrorists. In fact, that's my suspicion now. Sixi, who stole the sample from WIV, is an Al-Qaeda member. She may have been successful in propagating the virus X RNA and turned it into a biogerm agent. Where will she get the equipment and facilities to do it? In a low voice, she replied. I've been told that a retired general in China is under suspicion of being a benefactor of the Pakistani scientist. It's not only in movies that you can install a portable biolab. With a mind like that of Dr. Amira Siddiqui, she can innovate on how to culture SARS-CoV-2 isolates, and release them through any viable medium. This is the reason why I invited you to dinner. I need you to help me inform the World Health Organization about what's happening in Wuhan right now. I'm sure you know somebody discreet enough to pass the information to Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. What are we going to say to the WHO Director General? Obviously, Dr. Manville does not know how to play politics. Getting her Apple iPad Air, she said to him. I can email to WHO the result of my confirmatory test, as to the etiology of a probable SARS-CoV-2 outbreak in Wuhan. We have to be cautious. The Chinese government is very sensitive on this matter. Did you recall that they did not acknowledge that a viral agent has been stolen in the National Biosafety Laboratory? I even suspected that they put some pressure on IP and NIID not to divulge any information on virus X. What makes you said that? Our director advised me not to make any antagonistic remarks or propositions on any issue about the novel coronavirus. It is said that we don't have any right to interfere in the internal affairs of another sovereign country like China. Gwen insisted, but we are talking here of a possible viral outbreak. The WHO must be informed right away as to its cause, so that they can advise its states parties on the appropriate protocol, how to combat this emerging health emergency. Okay, we'll try to send your email to the Secretariat of the International Health Regulations, Emergency Committee. Its chair has been my classmate in medical school. Hubert finally conceded, and gave her the name and email address. Confidential. 4. WHO Director General. Reference: possible outbreak of an emerging infectious disease. Unofficial reports from China indicates a possible outbreak of an infectious disease, with a suspected patient 0, diagnosed of an illness similar to the viral respiratory disease of zoonotic origin, that surfaced in the early 2000s. The Wuhan Institute of Virology sent to me, through the Institut Pasteur a week ago, an oropharyngeal swab from a confirmed case that was subsequently tested using a standard protocol, and its RNA was isolated and found to be beta-cov, belonging to the coronavirus subgenus Sarbecovirus. I confirm that it's a SARS-CoV-2 strain, which is clustered with virus X, the same germ specimen that was stolen from the WIV-NBL. The virus could be characterized as spherical particles, with crown-like spikes ranging from 66 to 81 nanometers in diameter. It is highly recommended that the WHO should investigate the emerging disease, as it exhibits a very rapid human-to-human transmission that may lead to pandemic. Professor Sean Gabriel Fitzgerald enjoyed the quiet life of an academician in the last few years that he's been in the land of the rising sun. The daily grind of lectures and conferences were flavored with occasional field trips, educational tours, and research investigations. The United Nations University is very generous in allowing him to regularly visit other countries, to present scientific papers, or consult with government agencies on sustainable development. Likewise, a lot of peers in UNU and other leading universities in the world had already recognized and cited several of his journal publications. He's becoming in demand for lecture series, especially on disaster management. This professor's lonely life is a very serene existence, compared to what he had undergone 15 years ago. After graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point, he joined the Army, and was deployed in Iraq to fight in the invasion and occupation of the country, then consequently, overthrowing the Ba'ath Party government of Saddam Hussein. Before the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the Middle East in 2011, his life got a close call, when his unit was ambushed in the Mosul suburbs, by an overwhelming number of fighters affiliated with the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. The house-to-house fighting was very atrocious and bloody. The jihadists were ably led by their most fearsome commander, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. As a well-experienced captain attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment, the premier light infantry unit with specialized skills that enable them to perform a variety of operations, his decisive tactics and leadership saved his unit from total destruction, that is, after inflicting more than 100 casualties on the enemy, no matter if most of the Rangers were already out of ammunition. This action earned for him a Congressional Medal of Honor. Back in the States, being young and energetic, he cannot shake off the thirst for combat. So he applied for training and qualifications at the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The Delta Force is an elite special operations force of the U.S. Army, that is under operational control of the Joint Special Operations Command. The unit is tasked with specialized missions primarily involving counterterrorism, hostage rescue, direct action, and special reconnaissance, often against high-value targets. Graduating from the 6-month operator training course, Sage was attached to a reconnaissance and surveillance troop, under the G Squadron. The Recce unit supports the clandestine operations group of Delta Force. His unit was one of the first special forces to be deployed back to Iraq for the Operation Inherent Resolve. Task Force Green, as Delta Force call sign in command structure, advised and supported the Kurdish Peshmerga forces during its battle against the ISIL in August 2014, that eventually led to the full control of the Mosul Dam back in safe hands. A near-death encounter with the Jemaah Islamiyah in the Philippines ended his military career. The JI is listed in the UN Security Council Resolution 1267 as a terrorist group linked with Al-Qaeda, and is very active as a militant extremist rebel group, dedicated to the establishment of an Islamic State in Southeast Asia. In early 2015, SAGE was part of the U.S. Army contingent to the bioweapon exercises, a combined military training, civil military operations, and humanitarian projects by the United States and the Philippines. These operations were designed to maintain and develop the security relationship between the two countries' armed forces, through crisis action planning, through enhanced training to conduct counter-terrorism operations, and through promoting interoperability of the forces. As a lieutenant colonel, assigned by Pentagon for clandestine operations with the armed forces of the Philippines, he was invited by the Light Reaction Regiment of the Philippine Army, to advise them on tradecraft training program. On the twilight of January 23, somewhere in the hinterlands of Maguindanao, SAGE and a squad from the Light Reaction Company 3 Wikarat, encountered a company-size group of fighters from the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, a secessionist group in Mindanao. The ensuing firefight against about 75 armed rebels was lopsided. The BIFF Cotters were well trained and disciplined, as most of them used assorted high-caliber firearms such as M249 light machine gun, M4A1 carbine, M16A4 and AK-12 assault rifles. But the jihadists backed out from the fight after more than 30 of them were killed in direct action. The LRC troopers, still psyched up and fresh from a Delta Force training on marksmanship, had performed with elan and gallantry. 2 days later, back in Camp Gonzalo Cienco of the 6th Infantry Division, the Wikarat Company was ordered to spearhead a reconnaissance in force of an ongoing engagement at Tucanalipao Mamasapano, by the government's Special Action Force against various elements from the BIFF 1st Brigade and the 105th and 108th Base Commands of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. SAGE volunteered as an observer. It was anticlimactic when they arrived at the scene of encounter. The target of Oplan Exodus, a Malaysian bomb maker and FBI most wanted named Zulkifli Abdhur, often referred to by the nom de guerre Marwan, was eliminated in exchange for 44 SAF operatives that were brutally killed. Only a sporadic sniping remains. But it was too late, when he suddenly felt a searing pain in his back. Probably fired from range of 1.8 kilometers, a 50 caliber slug traveling a muzzle velocity of 853 meters per second from a Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle, miraculously missed his lungs but broke 2 upper true ribs, which destabilized his spinal column. According to the military report of his actions, he was in a state of coma when airlifted to Southern Philippines Medical Center in Davao City, for an emergency surgery. After recovery, he was advised not to do extra strenuous activities. So that upon his return to Delta Force headquarters, he was given an honorable discharge due to his physical condition, with full pension and all privileges of a U.S. veteran. Experiencing a midlife crisis, he decided to change profession and enter the academe. He enrolled and ultimately obtained a Master in Urban Planning, from Harvard Graduate School of Design. While working on his master's degree, the acting director of the National Clandestine Service of the Central Intelligence Agency approached him, if he can be available for service as a data analyst. She said that the job is simple, he will carry out covert operations around the globe. Since traveling had been his passion, he agreed to undergo a rigorous training to become a top spy for Uncle Sam. Currently, Agent Merckx is classified under a covered cell system in U.S. territories and abroad. After a year of private practice in environmental planning, he went to Japan and took the program Doctor of Philosophy in Sustainability Science, from the United Nations University in Tokyo. It's been a year from the time he was absorbed by UNU as a regular professor. Being an academician is a perfect disguise to his underground work involving covert operations of students who came from different parts of the globe.
Thank you for watching. Write in the comments section for your request as to what book, usually from Project Gutenberg, you want us to feature in your book channel.
Click like, To boost the rating of uBook channel, make a comment for us for the improvement of our services, and share this video to your friends, with the copyright intact. Please click subscribe, and hit the bell button to be notified of new uploads from uBook channel.